there a second? Moved and seconded. You get the last word. You're going to pass because we're all tired, right? All right. Open the roll, catch your vote, and electronic voting board. All right, close the roll. The vote is 5-2 to pass by 1569 definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Nugget Adams. 1386.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. HB 1386 is a bill to help protect seniors and their retirement benefits. Right now, some companies still offer pensions, and if you receive your retirement benefits through a pension, you've seen in the last number of years that in order to manage those pension liabilities, some companies, in lieu of maintaining that pension, have instead converted it to an annuity, a very large annuity that in most cases works for retirees. Those annuities are held by very large, top-tier, first-rate insurance companies, and oftentimes the annuity in lieu of the pension provides exactly what the retiree needs to last through their retirement. The challenge comes in, however, when those insurance companies, in some cases, sell off those annuities to a third party. There are no longer the federal protections in place that ensure that the third party that's purchasing the annuities are fiscally sound and fiscally solvent to be able to continue meeting the retirement needs of those retirees. This bill requires that the state corporation sign off on any transfer of those retirement annuities from the insurance companies holding them to a third-party purchaser, and to make sure that the third party is in fact fiscally sound and fiscally solvent to be able to continue meeting the needs of those annuity holders. This bill was brought to me by a constituent and transferred to me by Delegate Lipasi, and I believe that constituent is here today.
Are there any other scenarios where a single transaction like that has to get SEC approval? Obviously, there's a lot of scenarios where if you acquire all the assets, but where a single transfer like that would require SEC involvement?
In my conversations with Bureau of Insurance through the SEC, I did not get that kind of information. And
I think they may be here and maybe can answer that when time comes. Okay, great. Anybody else here to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Dave Edmonds. I'm a 32-year employee, former employee of Verizon Communications. I live in Midlothian. I retired over 20 years ago and have been on pension ever since. About 5 years ago, we were notified by Verizon that our pensions were being sold off to Prudential Insurance Company and converted to an annuity. That's called pension de-risking. It's something that's sweeping the country right now among a lot of our big companies. It's a good move by companies because they can reduce their expenses and their overhead and improve their bottom line. It's a terrible move for pensioners like myself and thousands of others right here in Virginia. Because once a pension is converted to an insurance annuity, we lose all federal protections under ERISA and the PBGC, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. And then, once we've lost those federal protections, we become solely dependent on state law for the protections against the company becoming insolvent and against subsequent transfers to less qualified or reputable companies. Verizon was the first company to do this. Since then, there have been 20 more companies followed suit. Sears, Penny's, General Motors, affecting tens of thousands of pensioners like myself. Most of these pensioners have no clue that what they've lost. They know they're getting about the same amount in an annuity as they got in their pension, but they have no idea they've been stripped of all the federal protections that they had under ERISA and the PBGC. This bill, 1386, is not asking for any new benefits or protections. All we're asking is to restore 2 of those protections that we formerly had federally, and that's protection against creditor claims and subsequent transfers of these annuities to less reputable companies. These are benefits most of us have worked a lifetime to earn, and it's our primary source of income. but now they're very vulnerable without any action at the state level. Similar legislation has already been enacted in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. And my goal would be to add Virginia to that group. Let me close by saying pension de-risking has become a multi-billion-dollar business across the country. More companies are certain to follow. There's no question about that. 20 have fallen in line just within the last 3 or 4 years. Both of these protections sought in this bill were supported by NCORP, the National Conference of Insurance Legislators, as well as from the National ProtectSeniors.org Retiree Association. I believe they not only are revenue neutral, but they're in the best interest of thousands of Virginia pensioners who are impacted by this de-risking. I thank you for your time and your attention to this very important matter.
All right, anybody else here to speak in favor of the bill? Anybody here speak in opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Reggie Jones, representing American Council of Life Insurance. First, I want to clear up one thing that you may have as a misconception on the bill, and that is this does not deal with the move of de-risking from the company that has a defined benefit plan to an insurer. This deals with a movement from one insurer to another insurer who's providing that annuity.
Right, so line 32, this applies to no retirement annuity contracts shall be transferred. So this is already an annuitized retirement contract.
That's correct. So we're not doing anything in this bill to impact what he is saying is the loss of provisions under ERISA or under the Federal Pension Benefit Guarantee Association. So this does not impact that, but if you read the bill, it still has some things in it requiring that you deal with that. And for example, one of the flaws in the bill that doesn't make sense in my opinion is in step 1, the insurer would have to retain an ERISA lawyer to write an opinion that the retirement annuity contract will be or will no longer be protected by ERISA. Well, I can write that opinion today without doing any research. It is not protected by ERISA. You've already lost that protection if there is a better protection there. And it says, or by the Federal Pension Benefit Guarantee. That's also no, it is not, because that is gone. But I would suggest to you that the Virginia, we have the Virginia Life and Health Guarantee Association, Insurance Guarantee Association, and I believe that Guarantee Association may be more financially sound than the Federal Guarantee Association. In fact, at the end of 2017, there was a $10.9 billion deficit in the Federal Guarantee Association. It's not fully funded, and there are no current plans to fully fund it. Second step is that the assuming insurer has financial strength to meet the obligations under the contract. Well, what they're asking in this is to go to the Bureau of Insurance and ask them to certify that. Well, that's what they do every year, every day. They regulate these insurance companies. They require annual filings. They have quarterly updates of those filings, of financial filings. And so the Bureau of Insurance, that's what they're about, is to regulate these insurance carriers and make sure that they are safe and sound. This requires consent. Whenever you make this transfer, you have to get consent of the policyholder. Now, you can get a waiver of that consent. Either party, the party that has the coverage now or the party that's going to, can say, we want to ask the Bureau of Insurance to waive that consent. Or the State Corporation Commission means the Bureau would waive it. But if you ask that, then the Bureau of Insurance does have a duty to come in and really fully look at that transfer.
Right, remember, we have another subcommittee to go.
Okay, well, as I was saying, and your comment about there's no other place that I know of where a single transfer, if you're transferring all the company assets, then the Bureau's going to get involved. But if it's a single transfer,
yeah, I mean, my concern with what's getting at, which is that this only applies to pensions that have already been de-risked into an annuity. This is just a subsequent transfer of that annuity to another one, which is a very typical transaction that happens every day with financial instruments. I don't think it actually gets to the problem. But, all right, anybody else in opposition?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Bill Gray on behalf of Metropolitan Life Insurance. I do have a MetLife representative with me to address any concerns. We oppose this bill also.
Okay. All right. Delegate Adams gets the last word.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Essentially, this bill is really a bill to protect you guys, we talked about it in the session today, the little guys, big companies, and really putting peace of mind into the retirees and the seniors who are concerned about the loss of protection to their assets, which is their annuity. In talking with the SEC, they said this is no problem to do, it's not an issue, there is no fiscal impact, and so I would just, I guess, leave it at that and say that the other thing that I think would be helpful in the future is if that detail that you were provided just now was also provided to me before this meeting. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so I think the concern that some have that I have is it doesn't prevent the transfer to a conversion of annuity, in fact, the transfer of annuity, which already has eliminated those two ERISA protections, the two categories you're trying to protect, which would then make it impossible to provide any opinion other than it violates, you've lost those protections. Frankly, to me, I think there's some people up here who think this is an issue that needs to continue to be worked on. I don't think this bill gets there. I wonder if people would be interested in carrying the bill over.
So moved. 22.
All right, so that would allow the bill to be out there. So there's a motion to carry over House Bill 1386 under Rule 22. We do have one necessary abstention, so this is a voice vote. There will be one abstention. Right? Okay. All right, so all those in favor of carrying over House Bill 1386, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, one abstention.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. Appreciate it.
All right, we have left, Levine has multiple bills, I think Rasul has multiple bills, and then Yancey and I have bills. So whichever one of y'all wants to go next, get up. All right, time's up, I'm going.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, if I call your attention to House Bill 120. These are two awesome bills brought to me by my friend who happens to be a constituent of none other than Chairman McGee.
And before we get going, you have like a $50 million budget impact.
No.
Do you have a budget amendment?
I have some thoughts about this impact that I've talked with, seriously, that I've talked with some of the folks who put this together that I have a disagreement on. I'd like to talk through that briefly with you, Mr. Chairman.
We can hear that, there's nothing we can do about it. And so understanding there's 35 more bills to go tonight between this subcommittee and the next, you use up people's time how you see fit.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was emailed to us yesterday, which I know you've expressed frustrations yourself. But because someone has traveled here to talk about it, I'll mention it briefly, Mr. Chairman. What we're trying to do is encourage more people to be working, obtaining part-time employment while they are searching for full-time employment and collecting benefits. Right now, people can obtain a part-time job, make $50 a week. We want to increase that to $100 a week to ensure that this encourages them. This was a big win to get people off of the unemployment rolls down in Alabama, where they passed a Republican legislature and governor passed a similar measure here recently. And I hope that we can consider that. And Mr. Chairman, I have someone here to speak on that.
And we would love to hear from you. And frankly, I think this fiscal impact statement is ridiculous. But we're seeing a lot of ridiculous fiscal impact statements this year that are blocking our hands is what we do. But go ahead. Thanks for being here.
You bet. At the end of December in the Blacksburg and Roanoke area, over 50% of the people that were on unemployment, receiving unemployment benefits, were 45 years of age or older, many with college education. This is our present middle class. I have 30 years in workforce development in 4 different states. I've actually career coached through 5 recessions, and I've worked primarily with adults. I have also worked with the Virginia Employment Commission, helping employers to find good talent. Personally, I have received unemployment in my career 3 times, twice in Virginia, once in another state, and so I have a lot of insights into it. The hiring process for a good full-time position has become very complicated and time-consuming and can easily take over a year for experienced persons to find semi-similar employment. So the purpose of House Bill 120 is to incentivize recipients to find part-time work while looking for their next full-time job. Because unemployment benefits are maxed at a certain amount of dollars for a specific amount of time, it's not going to increase anything that an employer has to pay. It's not going to increase money coming out of the fund. What I understand that the impact study said is they'd have to buy a little, update their software a little bit to make it work, and that is it. So people can only receive a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time, then it's gone.
So the fiscal impact statement is a $150,000 one-time expense for the software that you've indicated, and then millions upon millions upon millions upon millions annually of additional expenses, which again looks ridiculous on its face to me. It is what we had before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this is something to get people off the unemployment rolls. This is to encourage them to be working. In this calculation, it did not assume any positive benefits of rolling people off the unemployment rolls, nor did it factor in people who are reaching max benefits. So it was pretty frustrating. Here we tried to bring as they called it in Alabama, a pro-small business bill to get people off of unemployment. Right? You know, it's frustrating that those things are not factored in. So the frustrating person standing right behind you who wants to explain our fiscal impact statement.
The other piece of that is that when people are receiving or that are in a job, they're paying into the unemployment.
Oh yeah, no, I agree.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee,
I'm sorry,
Braxton Williams with the Virginia Employment Commission, wanted to explain the fiscal impact statement to you. The expenditures that you see represent the additional benefits that will be paid out of the unemployment trust fund if people are allowed to keep an additional $50 if they're working a part-time job. That does not come out of the general fund. The non-general fund that's referred to is the unemployment trust fund. The unemployment trust fund is made up of taxes that are paid by employers from which benefits are paid. So the revenue that you see there is the additional amount of taxes that will be collected from employers to pay out the additional benefits.
So does this replace, I mean, there was an enactment clause on here that indicated a $1.01 additional tax. Is this now just quantifying the effect of that?
It's actually $1.63 over that 8-year period. That's the average.
So you're saying that this bill is a tax increase as represented in the impact statement of millions of dollars a year?
Yes, it would increase the employer UI taxes that they pay because benefits are paid from employer taxes.
Yep.
And in order to pay additional benefits, we have to collect additional taxes.
Right, and so you understand that by this being filed the way it was filed, it means you kill his bill without it ever getting to have a substantive hearing.
We were not trying to kill his bill. The administration took no position. We simply wanted to make it understood if you increase the offset amount in order to pay those additional benefits, we have to have additional tax revenue to do so.
All right, so let me see if I read this right. Is it your position that the only budget amendment necessary is the $150,000 software upgrade, and the other numbers in the fiscal impact statement reflect the tax increase that we would be passing if we voted for this bill?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have a $150,000 budget amendment in for the software upgrade?
No, sir. We learned about that yesterday.
Yeah, it's killing me. It's killing me. This is the 50 bills we've had like this today.
Mr. Chairman, this is talking about changing one number from 50 to 100. I don't know where the $150,000 come from.
The $150,000 represent what we would need to pay our vendor who manages our software.
Right. I want that contract that I can change one number in the software and charge $150,000. I'll do it for $125,000. All right. Well, I mean, like the other bills, we're left without a choice other than to lay the bill on the table. It has a fiscal impact. It doesn't have a supporting budget amendment. we can't send it forward. It's incredibly frustrating for those of us who actually think this is a real issue we ought to be talking about. But Chair would entertain a motion to lay House Bill 120 on the table. All right, moved and seconded. Let's open the roll. We'll cast our vote in the electronic voting board. Yeah, hold on a second, get it set up. I'm talking too fast. I think we're open now. Yep. Cast vote in electronic voting board. All right, close the roll. The vote is 6-0 to lay House Bill 120 on the table. All right, House Bill 157. No, you did that one. 240.
240. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, if I could call your attention to House Bill 240, which would prohibit employers from asking about salary history. We're not saying that they can't ask for minimum salary requirements, but what we're finding is, especially people who are searching for employment later in their career, that they're being discriminated against. It's quite a discriminatory practice. For example, I had someone who was applying for a position. They had been a vice president making $80,000 a year, but they found something that they really enjoyed and wanted to get into, but it only paid $40,000. And because of their salary history, that employer then thought, well, this person must be overqualified and won't be happy making half. We're seeing this as a problem all across the country. Many states have already acted and said we want to prohibit them from discriminating. Sure, you can ask about minimum salary requirements, but what good reason is there to ask about some unrelevant information with regards to salary history?
I can't make any sense of the fiscal impact statement they put on this one. Have you seen that?
No.
So this one says it's indeterminate because last year this would have resulted in a $1.4 million civil penalty to DHRM because apparently they're violating this. I guess is how they're doing the math. And then also indicates that they're going to have to hire somebody new to deal with all the flood of phone calls they're going to get, and it's apparently so bad they can't put a number on it. This is one of those ones where they go, it's so bad we can't put a number, therefore a budget amendment's not necessary, which doesn't make any sense to me either.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know if you'd seen that, if that was a new fiscal impact statement.
Yeah, it just says no budget amendment. Yeah.
I think what this is saying is that DHRM violates this provision when you want to make the law, and would have violated it 17,000 times last year, times $100 per violation, I think is what they're saying. All right.
So obviously, Mr. Chairman, I guess if they would have changed their policy, they wouldn't have it, right?
Yeah, we passed this law, they changed the policy and stopped violating it. All right, anybody here speak in favor of the bill?
So salary history is not indicative of talents and skills. I mean, look at what you guys get paid to do for this particular job. If you had to put that on an application with salary history, that's what people would base what you were worth on. That, you know, tell me what that's worth. One of the things, if you haven't had to apply for a position for a long period of time, most people don't understand how frustrating the online application system is. Oftentimes, you're required to put in a salary amount before the system will move forward. And so there's no, like, say, variable, or if you have a job that you got a commission on one year and not another, there's no way to take care of that. Employers are overwhelmed with the number of applications that they get these days because it's fairly easy to use the internet like a lottery system, and they'll get lots and lots of them. So sometimes they use salary history almost unconsciously as one of the ways to eliminate numbers of applicants that they have to look for. So I've worked with thousands of people over my career, and some good examples of this particular thing are people that got laid off during the recession, ended up having to do 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs, and now that's the salary that the employer's basing their next position on. Persons who have moved from another place to the Roanoke area, particularly like New York City. I had somebody who was in New York City, came from New York City, was making a 6-figure salary, and she said, in downtown New York City, listed that as an eliminator. So, again, as Delegate Russo said, this is more towards the more experienced worker, and both of these bills would help the more experienced worker, our present middle class, stay in Virginia instead of having to move outside of Virginia. We're losing tax money when they have to move outside of Virginia to find employment opportunities. So I appreciate what the legislator has done with the new middle class. I'm just concerned about saving the present middle class.
All right, thank you. Anybody else here speak in favor of the bill? Anybody here speak in opposition to the bill? Last minute stand. Oh,
Mr. Chair, Ryan Dunn, Virginia Chamber of Commerce. Really briefly, most employers ask for this information, not to use it, but just to discriminate, but yet use it for finding the most applicable candidate for the job. We feel like this kind of legislation will lead to increased legal and administrative costs. And moving forward, you have to have some considerations in here about employees who actually volunteer their salary after being given an offer. How would that be implied in this? They react and say, oh my gosh, hey, I make way more than that at my previous job. They just disclosed their salary. And then also an exemption would be necessary for a salary range to even be applied under this. So for those reasons, we oppose the vote. Thank you.
all right.
Mr. Chairman, Nicole Raleigh, NFIB, and we have the same concerns as the raised.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Chairman
Chairman.
Marshall. Have a motion. You say the motion.
Move the table, HB 240.
All right. That's a motion to table House Bill 240. Before I hear that, because I always do, you want the last word?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, now we'll entertain the motion. Moved and seconded that we lay House Bill 240 on the table. We'll open the roll and cast the vote in the electronic voting board. Yeah. It's another nonsense. Let's go back stage. All right, close the roll. Vote is 6-1 to lay House Bill 240 on the table. You have one more? Sam, is that it?
That's all.
All right, Delegate Levine.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, I'd like to begin with HB 1269 because it's an agency bill without opposition and a pro-business bill. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee. HB 1269 comes to us from VITA, the Virginia Information Technologies Agency, and the Identity Management Standards Advisory Council, affectionately known as IMSAC. This is a bill that at first blush looks really complicated, particularly to a guy like me that knows very little about information technology, but they could explain it to me, so I hope I can explain it to you folks. Basically, Virginia law already allows us to verify someone's digital identity. So you go and you apply for a credit card, and you give them your name and your address, and your social security number, maybe your driver's license, and they say, okay, that's Mark Levine, we know who he is. And then they might issue me a chance to do a username and a password, and I can get in and pay my credit card. I've done that for several credit cards. And for each of my credit cards, I got to go through the same process. I got to go through the same process with Amazon, and the same process with any number of companies. And it gets hard because, frankly, I sometimes forget my password because they're a little different one from the other. That's already allowed under Virginia law. And as long as you obey certain standards set up by IMSAC that are complicated and full of IT stuff that I don't understand, but as long as you do the right thing, they can verify who you are, and there's a safe harbor to protect against liability. So that's already in the law. All this bill does is it allows you to have your identity verified across multiple platforms. So businesses want to come in Virginia and they want to create what's called a federation or a federated digital identity. It basically says, hey, we can verify it's you in this platform, that platform, that platform, and another one. It's a good big business. It's one we want to bring to Virginia. We just have to modify our code to allow it. And I've got Greg Richards, counsel for IMSAC from the Office of Attorney General here, as well as Eric Link, the Deputy Chief Information Officer of VITA, who can answer all your technical questions.
All right, anybody want to speak in favor of the bill? Come on up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee heard Frank Vita as the patron side of this agency bill we paid.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Anybody speaking in opposition to the bill? All right. The bill's before the subcommittee.
Mr. Chairman, move to report the bill.
All right. Is there a second?
There should be.
All right. Move to second that we recommend reporting House Bill 1269. Open the roll. Cast your vote on electronic voting board. All right. Close the roll. Vote is 2 to 5. The bill fails to report. All right. Delegate Levine, House Bill 40.
House Bill 40 is paid family medical leave. This is a program that exists now in 5 states.
Do you have a substitute you want us to adopt?
I do have a substitute.
All right, let's get the substitute before us. Do you have a motion on substitute? All right, Keen moves to adopt substitute. Lindsay seconds it. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? All right, substitute before us.
Okay, what substitute basically does is it says that if you're already providing these benefits to your employees, you don't have to be under this program. What this program does is doesn't cost the budget anything because it sets up a separate fund, much like we have for Social Security or unemployment insurance or any of those funds. It's a 0.2% match, employee match.
Are you saying that the substitute eliminates the budget amendment that's necessary under the impact statement for the introduced bill?
I'm saying that there is no budget amendment for the budget. In other words, there's no budgetary impact of this legislation. There never was.
Right, but the fiscal impact statement says it needs a budget amendment.
The fiscal impact statement says it costs 0 to the Virginia budget. Now, there may be a technical budget
I understand
amendment.
that, but it says budget amendment necessary, yes. A new item would need to be established under the Virginia Employment Commission, see item 8 below. So do you have a budget impact amendment to do what the fiscal impact statement says?
Given that the appropriation is 0 and given that the budget impact on the same bill last year said there was none necessary, I didn't apply for one this year. But again, it costs 0, so they would have to appropriate $0.
So this says VEC anticipates to fully implement this program an additional $14 million and 125 positions will be required annually.
And all of that is under the fund because the fund pays for administration.
So the answer is you don't have a budget amendment to address the concerns raised in the fiscal impact statement?
No, the answer is the fiscal impact statement says there is no budget, there is no 0 cost to the budgetary fisc. It says so, in fact, it says clearly that the impact of this bill on general fund revenue is indeterminate. It says so in the second to the last paragraph on page 2 of the budget impact statement. It suggests that there needs to be a new item established under the Virginia Employment Commission.
And do you have a budget amendment to accomplish that?
I do not have a budget amendment because there's no change to the budget. And that's
I think you're confusing changes to the budget with an expenditure in the budget. You need a budget amendment to do what this says, as the fiscal impact says. It wouldn't be a dollar amount, it's a language program amendment, but it's still a budget amendment. It has to exist before the budget can
I'd be happy to introduce one on the floor when the budget comes.
Mr. Chair.
Because it requires no appropriation.
Delegate Keen.
I just want to make sure we're clear here because I've been on this committee now for a while and we were here for 3-4 hours today and this has been done to many other bills that are great on the merits, on substance that I support 100%. But because we have to live by some rules that I don't necessarily agree with, but the rule is that if you don't, as a patron, if you don't put in a budget amendment to deal with the bill that you have in front of you, then it just makes it really hard for us to move forward. Because even if you want to support the measure, we have to send it up to appropriations. And if the Chairman Jones and others at the Appropriations Committee doesn't see a matching budget, then they're not going to take action on it. And that's just the reality that we're dealt with. I don't make up the rules here. That's just the rules that we're dealing with. So, Mr. Chairman, my advice to the patron is that this is a situation where I support you on the merits and we would be happy to work with you, but if there's not a budget amendment that was filed, it just makes it really tough, especially for someone on this side of the aisle. It's very tough for us to help you go forward at this point.
And so is that a motion to lay HB 40 on the table?
No, sir.
All right.
Just so you know, I certainly can put it in next year. I've offered this same bill now for 2 years. They've never required a budget amendment in the last 2 impact statements. This is, I guess, a new regime where they now require budget amendments where there's no budgetary impact.
So your House Bill 999 from 2016 had the exact same budget amendment necessary. Item 127.10 would need to be created since these activities need to be administered separately. Same requirement has been filed each time your bill's been filed with no responsive budget amendment. All right, the chair will entertain a motion to lay House Bill 40 on the table. Moved and seconded. Open the roll, cast your vote, and electronic voting board. We are all really frustrated with these fiscal impact statements, but it's just not a new rule. All right, close the roll. The vote is 6-0, lay the bill on the table. Thank you. I think the only,
It's been applied to me in 3 years, but I
except in 2016. All right, I think the last bills, Yancey's and mine. All right, watch this, insurance people. Watch close, going about to bid. Watch. House Bill 1304 is my bill. I would like to kill that bill as aggressively as possible. It is a great bill that ought to be the law of Virginia. It just shouldn't become the law tonight of Virginia. So I would like the motion to pass by indefinitely Habib's House Bill 1304. Habib declines to take the 2 minutes to oppose that motion. No, you go. But Kilgore and I both want this to be the law of Virginia. Just not tonight. Tomorrow morning, all could be different. I'm just kidding. I'm not trying to bring it back tomorrow morning. Might though. All right. Yep, we have a motion in a second. We can open the roll. Cast vote on electronic voting board. Lindsay's my boy. All right, close the roll. The vote is 6-1 to pass by my bill. All right, Yancey's up. Do you just have the 2 bills left that kind of go together?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, I've also told pro and con supporters, make it brief.
All right, House Bill 435.
Chairman, 435, the background on this is we've had some people who've had cancer that were struggling with this issue. So all this bill seeks to do is 2 things. In regards to adverse determination and regarding coverage for treatment, to make a decision within 72 hours for cancer treatment, and for an independent review from an organization who fails to make a decision to uphold or reverse the determination, they can make within 48 hours. So, Mr. Chairman, I would say that all this...
You want us to adopt the substitute?
Yes, I was going to say this is amendment of substitute.
All right, move second to adopt substitute. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, all right, substitute.
Substitute before you, Mr. Chairman, that is what the bill does. We have representative from Hampton University to speak to the bill, and I know Doug will also want to speak to it.
All right, support. Anybody in support of the bill? Come on up. Oh, he's behind you. He's behind you.
Oh, there.
Thanks for being here, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This is something new to the technologies that you brought on with proton therapy, and to make the bill work. We were bombarded with patients who came in that had delayed in getting a final determination on whether or not they could qualify for proton therapy. And one of the reasons is because it's considered investigational and experimental, even though it is FDA approved and Medicare approved, and even the VA and the DOD uses it as well. But because we wanted to compile the language, and we met with the Bureau of Insurance, and we talked about how we can make this work. We also talked to some others at Anthem, who's been helpful, and others, to make sure that we got this. This is nothing new. In states that have new technology, they have taken chances they've already taken steps to make this merge. It's just making it easier when someone has a life and death situation or a decision that they have to be made. We just want to make it consistent that the language as originally submitted accomplish addressing the objective of the only standard decisions, but make that equitable to the expedited decisions that need to be made when people are in these particular situations. Excuse my voice, but that's our position on this.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. All right, anybody here speaking opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Doug Gray, Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Health Plans. This bill deals with the external appeals process, which is run by the Bureau of Insurance. The first question we really have is what problem we're trying to solve. The Bureau, I believe, will report that there's been one instance in which a external expedited appeal wasn't done within 72 one time. And if you want to confirm that, the Bureau can confirm it.
Where's the Bureau? You agree with that, only one time? Do y'all disagree with that?
Yes, we do.
Now, Mr. Chairman, it's possible that a self-insured plan that doesn't follow state law could have taken longer, but they're regulated by the Department of Labor. All of the fully insured plans are regulated under state law. The Bureau of Insurance runs this process, not the health plan, and they're required to do it within 72 hours. So the second thing I would just suggest to you is 38.2.35.64 makes the decision binding upon the health plan. And we have no control over the process and whether it's done on time. If this is deemed to be approved, if it's late, you're making the consequence on the health plan when we had nothing to do with the process.
Do you agree with that, Bureau? They have nothing to do with the process, but they're...
That's right.
Okay.
And then the last thing is that we shouldn't treat cancer any differently than any other disease. All urgent appeals should be done in 72 hours. That's what the statute says, and that's what the Bureau is responsible for doing. Thank you.
All right. Delegate Yancey, last word.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this simply comes from the Weber family and other families that we received telephone calls after last year's passage of the proton therapy bill. We received several telephone calls from some people throughout the Commonwealth about their inability to get in front of what was recommended by their doctors as consideration for proton therapy. That's what brought this bill, and that's what brought it before you.
So, I mean, I'm sensitive to the issue getting at. I do think the problem is that the controls from the Bureau, but the consequences with the insurer. And that's a kind of an unfair position. Okay. The bill's before the subcommittee. Is your other bill related to this?
I can do that right now.
All right. Well, I didn't hear a motion on that one, so let's go on to your next bill. House Bill 1080. No, excuse me, not
328.
Yeah.
328, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, likewise, similar issue with what we dealt with after the passage of the proton therapy bill, where we heard from some people throughout the Commonwealth about some issues trying to get in front of. So what this bill seeks to achieve is that the person will not have exhausted his health carrier's internal appeal process before seeking an external review, especially if it's in regards to cancer. And then the second thing the bill seeks to achieve, Mr. Chairman, is that the covered person may request an expedited external review if the adverse determination relates to the treatment of cancer of the covered person. And again, Mr. Thomas from Camp University, Dr. Thomas from Camp University next week.
All right. And with the audience, this is our last bill. Sub 2 is going to go as fast as they can get the technology set up here. That takes them 15 minutes or so to convert. But we'll be starting sub 3 here very shortly.
Yes, sir. Thanks again. This is a problem, and the problem was created when the bill we had last year, 1656, which dealt with non-discrimination proton therapy versus traditional therapies that they use. It's a new issue that's coming to task right now. We didn't bring it forward because we had no knowledge of it. We were presented with cases across the Commonwealth, at least 6, that brought this issue before. The issue is, in every case, you do need to have expedited processing. But in proton therapy, because it is new, it appears to be a little bit more complex to the patient who don't quite understand when and how they can get an expedited decision. And they're not contacting the Bureau, which is very, very helpful to us, because they just don't know where to go. The state of California, which I've sent all of you guys an article on that, have already addressed this problem. It's nothing that we're trying to do to over-regulate. All we're trying to do is give the customer, the client, the patient that's in very serious situation an opportunity to have definite times that they can have this before and a decision being made. We didn't bring it because we wanted to. Others asked us to do it for them.
All right, anybody in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, if you look at 38.2.35.60, the exhaustion of internal appeals process, it already allows the covered person to file an immediate request for an expedited external appeal if they ask for an expedited internal appeal. So there is zero delay. If you apply for an expedited internal appeal, you are deemed exhausted. That was already built in the statute. That was already built in the process. So I'm not sure why you would need this bill, given what's in 38.2.35.60 on exhaustion. Thank you.
All right, Delegate Yancey.
Mr. Chairman, final word just simply be on these two pieces of bills before you. This just goes back to from the moment we eventually passed this approach out there to go last year to where we are now. We've had some folks who have had some hiccups in the system in order to be able to get the kind of treatment they would like to be able to get, and some of the frustrations they've had, and that's what you've been hearing from Dr. Thomas from Hampton University.
All right. House Bill 320 is before the subcommittee. All right, hearing no motion, that bill will go by. You can make a motion. All right, move the report. All right, I don't hear a second, so the bill will fail for lack of a second. All right, so that's our docket. We are done before 6. That is horrible. I'm sorry for everybody here. We're going to take about a 15-minute break while they convert this. Chairman Kilgore would like all the members of Subcommittee 2 and 3 to go over to the room over there while they set everything up, and we are adjourned.